Hi everyone, Susan Storm here, founder of Psychology Junkie and a certified MBTI practitioner. Today I want to talk about conversation. Oftentimes, family conflicts show up around the Thanksgiving table. One person isn't communicating in a way that makes the other person feel comfortable. Someone's debating and someone else doesn't like that. Or another person is talking about touchy subjects that are making everyone tense. All these different personalities tend to collide around Thanksgiving, which can result in a lot of frustration, conflict, or just plain discomfort around holiday gatherings. With that in mind, I wanted to talk about some of the different styles of communication you probably will encounter around the Thanksgiving table, or if you're not in the US, around the Christmas table or whatever celebration you're having. I want to talk about these preferences because if we understand the way different people think, then we can have more grace for when they are doing something that, according to our personalities, might be a little uncouth or even annoying. If we tend to go through life expecting everyone else to be like us, and when they aren't, we think they're wrong. This is why the understanding of personality type can be it helps us to not only have more grace for ourselves, but it helps us to extend that same grace to people who do not operate in the same way that we do. So, with that said, let's talk about some of the different ways that the 16 Myers-Briggs personality types communicate. Introverts need time to think and process before they speak. At the Thanksgiving table or holiday gathering, this can look like someone asking an introvert a question and then pausing for so long that the extrovert thinks they're either ignoring them, being rude, or starts answering for them. What extroverts often need to realize with introverts is that they need to be allowed this pause to gather their thoughts before they speak. Extroverts tend to think out loud, whereas introverts process and analyze internally and then have to put it all together into words before they can say it. So they need more time to process. A lot of competing conversations can be really overwhelming to introverts. When there's a lot of sensory stimulation, they tend to feel agitated and stressed. So if you have an introvert at your table over the holiday season, one thing you can do is try to keep the noise down. For example, if everyone's chattering and there's jangly Christmas music in the background, you can try to turn that down, or you can direct conversations so there's less competing talking. Or if everyone's done eating, you can pull the introvert aside and have a one-on-one conversation with them because that's where they're likely to thrive and feel comfortable. Next, let's talk about extroverts. Extroverts tend to think out loud more than introverts do. They process as they're speaking in many situations. Now, this isn't across the board, but this is a very common trait of an extroverted personality type. Well, you're going to have a lot more continuous conversation and interaction if you have multiple extroverted people at the table. And they can talk for a more extended period of time without wearing out, whereas introverts are more likely to wear out the longer that they're talking unless it's something really inspiring to them. Now, the hard thing for extroverts is sometimes there will be a lone extrovert in a family or gathering of largely introverted people. And then they feel the weight of trying to carry the conversational load and involve people. I have been in situations where there are mostly introverts at a social gathering and there's one or two extroverted people. And they keep trying to engage and get the conversation going and make sure people are included. Even though there are introverts there, they do want to talk, but not instigating anything. And so the extrovert feels the load of having to carry the whole social experience for everyone. That's also something to keep in mind for the extroverted people at the table. Introverts, if you're with an extroverted person at the table and they're talking a lot, don't take this as them being like a chatterbox or seeking the spotlight or trying to be the center of attention. Think of this as them trying to interact, engage, and connect with other people and maybe get something started where everyone can take part. And jumping in when an extrovert is having a conversation, say they're monologuing for a while, jumping in with your own thoughts they wouldn't consider that rude unless they're just an unhealthy person. So jump in and share your thoughts. Don't feel like you have to just sit back and only listen. They want to hear what you think as well. They need more data and information to bounce off of. They enjoy the interactive process. Next, let's talk about sensing types, so people with an S in their type code. Sensors are very focused on the linear sequence of events. They want to talk about real lived experiences, facts, tangible reality. And when they explain things, they're going to explain things in a linear, sequential order rather than jumping all over the place or focusing primarily far ahead in the distant future. They can feel bored or listless if a conversation is overly abstract, too focused on concepts, ideas, and possibilities that are way far ahead, and they're thinking, why are we talking about this? It's not relevant now. These aren't facts. Why are we theorizing about things that may or may not ever come to pass? A sensing type wants the conversation to have real world relevance. So keep that in mind when you have sensors at the table. If the conversation is stuck on abstract concept or a distant possibility, they might be feeling a little uninspired and a little bored and even a little bit like, what is the point of all of this? This doesn't mean you can't have your own intuitive conversations, but it just means try to find a practical application for what you're talking about. For example, if you're talking about politics and the implications of whoever got elected tr- president, try to think of a practical application or ask a practical question like, what do you think the immediate effects of this presidency will be? Finding a way to connect this abstract concept to the present moment and to an action will help them to feel more inspired, engaged, and interested in the conversation versus theorizing about all these things that could happen and imagining and talking about all these distant possibilities. For the sensor, that can feel a little bit just unimportant to them because they are wired to think primarily about the facts, details, and realities of the present moment or the lessons, traditions, and wisdom of the past. Next, let's talk about intuitives. Those are all about imagination, concepts, ideas, insights, predictions, possibilities. They're less focused on those facts and details and tangible realities that the sensors are focused on, and more about what could be based on patterns. So, for intuitives at the table, they're going to be interested in predicting or extrapolating long term possibilities. They're going to be interested in getting a deeper understanding of concepts. They might enjoy taking apart different religious or political theories because they like to get into the world of deep ideas and a deep understanding of concepts. They tend to get bored in conversations that focus a lot on just practical realities. For example, I was once at a Thanksgiving dinner with a bunch of sensing types, and they spent a long time talking about the varieties of different types of bell peppers and which recipes they used for bell peppers in a really long conversation. And the people involved were really interested in the conversation, but as an intuitive, even though I do cooking from time to time, I was pretty bored. I felt, can't we talk about something that leaves room for the imagination, room for interpretation or hypothesizing or conceptualizing, something that has a little more room for creative, imaginative thinking than analyzing the different types of bell peppers. Now, I'm not saying that sensors do not have imagination or creative thinking. They absolutely do. Some of them had some really creative approaches that they used with these bell peppers to create these really unique dishes. Okay, so that is involving imagination, is involving creativity, but that imagination and creativity is often using facts and real world tools, objects, ingredients, experiences to create something new. Whereas for an intuitive, the focus is far less on the tangible and far more on the intangible things that we don't see, feel, taste, touch, and sense. Concepts like love, faith, belief or disbelief are far more interesting to the intuitive, these intangible things that are more concept based versus reality fact based. Next, let's talk about feeling types. Feeling types care about what's personally going on with people, how people feel, and what their personal values are. Feeling types are going to care about, hey, when I made these stuffed peppers, it made grandma really happy. She said she used to make these when she was a young girl, and I felt really connected to her. Speaking of which, how has she been doing? She's not here today. How is she feeling? That everyone's sharing their feelings about a specific thing, talking about shared relationships, what you think is right or wrong, important or unimportant. Feeling types don't care as much about plain, unrelated facts as they care about how those facts affect people, how people are feeling, what their opinions are, where their values lie, what they feel is right or wrong. Feeling types tend to be more conflict avoidant than thinking types. So while they might care about what someone thinks is right or wrong, they might avoid topics like religion or politics if they feel that's going to create a lot of tension. This is especially true for feeling judging types, more so than for feeling perceiving types, who can get really outspoken in defense of their values and create arguments over ethical opinions. Next, let's talk about thinking types. Thinking types are more interested in a logical understanding of things, which can take the form of sharing how-tos, advice, tips, techniques, or even debating. For them, understanding and getting to the truth of something or finding a better way to do something is all very appealing to them. For example, when I, an INTJ, am conversing with my ENTJ father, like we talk a lot about business strategy, or we talk a lot about stocks and investments and things like that. It seems pretty boring to some people, but it's actually something where we're trying to figure out ways to better resource our lives and make better strategic decisions to take care of our families. At the same time, thinkers are also interested, especially if they're intuitive thinkers, in finding truths through debating theories, religious viewpoints, or political viewpoints, iron sharpening iron and getting closer through the process of argument to a deeper understanding of something. So if you have a lot of thinkers at the table, they might be arguing about something and it might seem really passionate, but they're actually having just a good time. Whereas for feeling types, if there's an argument going on, they're more likely to feel stressed, worried about how other people are feeling, and emotionally riled up throughout the process. All right, so let's break it down according to the cognitive functions. Let's start by talking about feeling judging personality types. Feeling judging personality types use a process called extroverted feeling. And extroverted feeling is very concerned with harmony and connection. Extroverted feeling types want to feel intimately connected to another person by sharing their personal values, by having meaningful conversations, by entering a really positive, harmonious vibe with another person. And so they can do this through cracking the perfectly timed jokes, by disclosing something about themselves to make someone else feel comfortable, by using manners, etiquette, and tact to help everyone feel comfortable and at ease. FJs really care about the overall mood of the room. Their emotional awareness can help them to orchestrate a positive mood and a sense that everyone's voice is heard, everyone's included, we're all having a good time, right? Feeling judges are really good at that. They're really good at socially lubricating the atmosphere to make sure everyone feels accepted and comfortable. Then you have feeling perceiving types, FP types. These types value a process called introverted feeling. Introverted feeling is less about orchestrating the environment to create a particular mood and more focused on your own individual personal values and feelings about things. A feeling perceiving type might personally feel like they want to include everyone, so they might go around and try to make sure everyone feels comfortable, and in that way they may look like a feeling judging type. Yet another feeling perceiving type might have a very strong personal value that they don't want to feel part of the group. They want to do what feels right to them and not feel compelled to be a chameleon for anyone else. And this feeling perceiving type might sit in a corner during a holiday gathering and just draw in their notebook. And some people might think, oh, wow, they're so selfish. They're not interacting with other people. But for them, it's about staying true to themselves. They believe everyone should have the space to express themselves in whatever way they want. Introverted feeling types tend to have a more individualistic style. They're comfortable expressing their views, even if it might ruffle some feathers, because the core need of this type is to stay true to themselves, even if it upsets the harmony. They want other people to feel comfortable expressing themselves as well, and they do care about how they impact other people emotionally. In turn, they tend to mirror other people's emotions, hear what someone else is saying, and put themselves in that person's shoes. So they can be deeply empathetic and sensitive, but they are more individualistic and going to speak their mind regardless of whether or not it's the socially appropriate thing to do. Extroverted feeling types, FJs, are very aware of what's socially appropriate, whereas introverted feeling FP types tend to care a little bit less about what's socially appropriate and more about what do I actually feel? What do I personally feel is right or wrong or important and meaningful? Next, we've talked about the feeling types. Let's go to the thinking types. The extroverted thinking types, TJ types, tend to be very straightforward, direct, and blunt. They will say exactly what they think, and they won't sugarcoat it. They like it when other people do the same for them. If you're with a TJ type, they might blurt something out that seems insensitive, but to them, it's more considerate and kind to speak the truth directly, even if it might hurt, rather than to sugarcoat it. They tend to feel insulted when people are sugarcoating things for them. They get impatient with it. They think, why are you insulting my intelligence by sugarcoating this? Why can't you just get to the point? And TJ types do really care. They care just as much as any other type would. But because they tend to be so blunt and direct, sometimes it can look like they don't care. And the truth is, they just feel like by being honest and direct and getting right to the point, I am caring for the other person's time. I'm being efficient in communication. And that is something that they do to take care of people is they feel like by being efficient in everything, including communication, they are valuing the other person's time, they're valuing their intelligence, and they're giving them the direct information they need without wasting a lot of time on creating padding or fluff to make it more digestible. But the important thing is, TJs, if you're at these kind of dinners, think about how you can speak the truth with love. Mary Poppins says a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. And I think that's something that TJs like me and many others have to work on is learning to give the truth with that little spoonful of sugar so that you are not making them refuse the medicine entirely. Let's talk about thinking perceiving types. Thinking perceiving types are all about getting to the core of a matter and understanding how things work. When I'm in conversations with TP types at the dinner table, they enjoy talking about and unpacking either how a theory works for NTP types or how an object works for STP types. For example, my husband is an ESCP, so he'll spend a lot of time talking about how to get your settings right on a camera or something he's building in the garage. These kinds of conversations are really fun. And then other people will talk to him about how they're building a computer or creating their own innovative computer, and loves that kind of conversation where he's able to communicate about how you're understanding and building something new with actual tangible objects. And NTP types also can enjoy those kind of conversations, but they also enjoy unpacking theories and concepts and getting to the nitty gritty details of what makes up these theories. What are the components and what categories are in these theories and how can we understand them in a really precise, logical way. Now, TP types can get a little frustrated sometimes as they're trying to have these conversations. Now, TP types can run into some of the same problems that TJ types run into, where because they're so focused on accuracy and truth, they may not sugarcoat things, or they may say something really directly that could rub someone the wrong way. And then they are left wondering, what did I do? I didn't mean to upset the harmony or anything like that. Maybe they get carried away with argument because TPs enjoy a good argument and they get carried away with it. And then they end up ruffling feathers, causing disharmony. And then they feel like they have to go into repair mode sometimes. And that can just be stressful for everyone, especially them. One thing to keep in mind, the same advice I would give to TJ types. For TP types, speak the truth with love, put a little sugar into what you're saying, and try not to dissect people too much. I understand this because as an NT, when I'm trying to connect with someone, my way of connecting can look more like I'm dissecting them and trying to figure out how they work. And this can feel very invasive to some types, or it can feel just like you looking for some way to criticize them or offer them advice they don't even want. And so for TP types, finding some ways, put in some easy questions so that you can have a conversation with someone without them feeling that way. What are your favorite things to do? Or what was the best part of your week? Or what's your favorite dish at the Thanksgiving table? I would show up at Thanksgiving, and this is probably for all thinkers, with a few kind of easy small talk questions that can then lead to deeper questions. For example, asking someone, what do you like to do the most? And they say reading, you can get into a deeper conversation about books. But having a few easy questions that can help you connect with others in a simple way, you're not getting too invasive, you're not talking too much about something that isn't personal. Finding a few questions prior to a gathering that actually have some personal meaning and allow you to form a personal connection to another person can be really valuable. Next, let's talk about sensing types, the two different types of sensors. Extroverted sensing types in conversation want to talk about things that can be done in the moment. They are focused on amplifying the present moment and making it as fun or exciting as possible. One difference between SE and SI types is that introverted sensing types, SJ types, tend to rehash the past, explain a story from their past in detail. They don't like to leave out any details. They want to tell the full story. And this to extroverted sensing types can feel a little bit overwhelming or even boring. They can be like, okay, I don't care what street you turned on or what day you had this particular conversation. Let's get to the bullet points. Whereas for introverted sensing types, they're awesome storytellers, and they tend to put in all the details, and they want to be able to share deeply meaningful stories from their past and see what wisdom can be gleaned from those stories. Extroverted sensing types are more going to be focused on, hey, can we go ahead and get everyone up and play a game? Or maybe we could talk about a creative project we've been working on or something we're building or doing. What cool experiences have you had? What great restaurants have you eaten at? A lot of their conversation topics, they wanted to have a real current, in the moment, relevant impact and application. They also like to talk about experiences and get experiences going. This is especially true for ESP types, so ESTPs and ESFPs. And they tend to get a little restless and bored if the conversation feels too abstract or if it feels too to the point where nothing is happening. People are just talking and there's no action happening. Yes, sensing perceivers can be extroverted in the case of ESPs, but they still like to be up and doing. They're very action oriented. A lot of sitting and chatting can over time feel dull. If everyone was getting up on their feet, moving around and talking, that would be different, which is why you might find an ESP cleaning up the kitchen while they're talking to someone else, or starting a game and having conversation going throughout the game. In contrast, introverted sensing types like those more personal sharing moments where they're sharing, oh, remember that Thanksgiving from 10 years ago when this happened? Let's talk about the time that, Aunt so and so did this funny thing. Wasn't that fun? They want to relive and reminisce about past experiences. And that's really important to them, especially during family gatherings. They can get frustrated if their past that they're talking about, like the story they're sharing from their past, is dismissed or devalued, or people don't seem to be as interested in it as they are, or if people try to rush them through the storytelling process. They can feel really undervalued during that time. It's important for the SJ type to have special traditions around the holidays, and that those traditions aren't dismissed or changed from year to year. They want to have the same dish every Thanksgiving or a certain routine, or maybe they watch Charlie Brown's Thanksgiving every Thanksgiving. And so they want to have these special little routines, these special little rituals that they can look forward to every single year. And so making sure that you value that when you're with an S, try not to brush it off. Oh no, we got to watch that again. Or I can't believe you made the same stuffing you always make. Don't you ever try anything new? This would be really frustrating for an SJ because keeping those traditions alive is really meaningful to them. Lastly, let's talk about the different types of intuitives. First, there are the introverted intuitives. These are the NJ personality types. NJ personality types really like to dive deep into an understanding of a concept. They also are very visionary and they like to predict far into the future. They're also interested in perspective shifting, understanding how different people interpret a concept or a belief. So, conversations can get really deep with introverted intuitive types. They want to walk away with a deeper understanding of life itself, the meaning of life, the big picture, why we're all here, some kind of cosmic significance. If there is no depth to the conversations at a holiday gathering, they can feel really listless, bored, and depressed even. You might find INTJs or INFJs just finding a way to seclude themselves and read a book or do something that will infuse some meaning into the day. Introverted intuitives are also not the brainstormy types. They don't just bounce tons of ideas off of each other in real time. That's more of an extroverted intuitive thing. And then let's talk about extroverted intuitives. Extroverted intuitives are all about exploring as many possibilities and ideas as they can. They want a lot of breadth of imagination in their conversations. They want to explore what could be and jump from one idea to another that seems related and find patterns and connections. This is the superpower of the extroverted intuitive types, the ability to find these cool creative connections and possibilities. However, during family gatherings, sometimes these extroverted intuitives are talking about these possibilities, and other types, sometimes sensing types or sensing judges in particular, be like, okay, you need to slow down. That's not realistic. It's not practical. Let's focus on what actually has been done. Let's go back to the facts. and trying to rein in the extroverted intuitives' idea generating imagination. And that can be really frustrating and feel very dismissive to the NP personality type. Types who use extroverted intuition may also be introverts. So any type who has NP in their type code is an extroverted intuitive type. It may just not be their first function. For INFPs and INTPs, extroverted intuition is their second function. But having the freedom to explore, to generate, to create new ideas and envision new realities is very important to NPs. And it's important to not dismiss that. Their NPs are all about trying to trailblaze new paths and do things that haven't been done before. Often people get dismissive and condescending about that, and it's important to try not to do that. Try to keep these things in mind as you're communicating with other people. It might help you understand them a little bit better, and it might help you also understand yourself better and where you fit in. I hope you've enjoyed this. You can find out much more about communication and type on my website at psychologyjunkie.com. I feel like I'm a much better communicator through writing than video, but I hope you've enjoyed this. And you can also find out more in my book, which is called Discovering You, Unlocking the Power of Personality Type. Hope to see you next time. Bye, everybody.